Smart aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. We've got another creative on today. Welcome, Alexa.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be really fun. I have been binging your stuff all morning, so I know we have plenty to talk about. But for anyone who doesn't know you, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Yeah, so my name is Alexa. I run a business called Productized Creative. I'm in the process right now of pivoting from being a freelance writer and social media consultant to more of a brand development consultant, strategist, really kind of focusing on helping creative entrepreneurs find their zone of genius and creativity and be able to monetize that, whether it's like creating content, creating productized services, and just overall doing things to help them build their brands. I have a lot of experience on the writing side. I have a background in journalism and have been writing on the internet for 10 years and also have my master's degree in marketing. So I have a lot of different experience and expertise in that realm that I would love to bring to the table and love helping creative entrepreneurs really get a handle on.
We're going to definitely dive into all of that, but where I want to start and where I'd love for us to start today is your journalism background, because I thought for a hot minute that maybe I wanted to be like a newscaster when I was like a tiny child. This is the funniest stories in the fifth grade was like on the news reporting team. And whenever my little newscaster partner, we're all of 10 years old, was reading, I was reading, like mouthing the words to his teleprompter. And then I got like demoted from this position. So that was like to turn me off from journalism really in the beginning, which is so funny. But I've always loved journalism. I've loved writing. I've loved like the art craft of it because it really truly is a craft. What drew you into the journalism space to start? And was that kind of where you saw yourself going and then landed here? Or was it just kind of a stepping stone?
Yeah, it's actually a really funny story. So when I was in high school, I was like kind of like all high schoolers do, like your junior, senior year, you're kind of having that existential crisis of like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And
right.
At the time I was in DECA, which is like marketing club at my high school. And like, I was enjoying it. And my parents are both very business minded. And they were like trying to like get me into like, my mom's an accountant. So she was like pushing me towards accounting. My dad's like, no, like she can't be an accountant. And then my dad one day just asked me, he's like, what do you want to do? And at the time there was this TV show that I had watched. It was very niche. It was called Stylista. And essentially it was like a competition reality show of these like, I think they were journalists, creatives, I don't know, editors, but they would basically put together spreads for, it was for Elle magazine. And the winner would get to like have a spot on the editorial team. And I thought that was so cool. And I was like, I want to do magazine layouts. I told my dad this. And so he goes, oh, well, it sounds like then you should look into journalism. And that it kind of clicked. And so I entered entered college with the intention of being a fashion journalist. So my dream at the time was to write for like W magazine in New York. And so when I was in college, I got super involved in my student magazine. We also had a fashion magazine on campus, so I was super involved in that. But it was just so much fun to like be on that side of things. I'm always been kind of a writer, and that was the best way to tell my stories and everything. And I loved profiling people. So in college, it was so much fun to get to talk to different people, to talk to the different businesses, find really that like uncovered, like hidden gem story. And so it was a lot of fun. But then as kind of college went on, I realized it was a little bit kind of unrealistic what I wanted to do, like just based on the market, based on how the journalism industry is changing. Like they weren't really doing a lot of full-time staff positions. It really wasn't like the most, like you wouldn't get the best salary coming out of school. So I kind of had to shift my focus a little bit. So I kind of left that world behind and like moved to like content marketing, which is essentially just writing for businesses.
Exactly. What time frame is this? Like how long after college did you decide to kind of embark on were you straight freelance or were you working for an agency to begin with?
My first job out of college was at a enterprise tech company doing as a content marketing specialist. So this was like right after. And then I had started my business literally like within the week of getting my job, because at the same time I was, at the time I was like, oh, well, like my dad had also suggested, was like, oh, you should start like a business and stuff and just, work freelance until you can find a job. And so I ended up like, I was in the interview process, started my business, and then I just kind of kept my business on as a side hustle. And then I was working in-house for about 4 years. And then I decided to go full time with my business, which was 3 years ago to this date.
So I have the kind of opposite experience because I started my business in college and then graduated, and my parents, same thing, very business minded, are like, just do it until you don't like it and then go find a job. So I never like did the formal interview process, never worked in-house anywhere. So this is kind of all I've ever known. So I love asking, from your perspective, are you glad that you had those 4 years on the enterprise agency side, or do you wish that you had just kind of gone, like really gone for it from the beginning? Because I mean, grass is always greener, right? Sometimes I kick myself and I'm like, man, I really think I would have benefited from being in an environment with a bunch of people that have been doing this a hell of a lot longer than I have. I'm curious what your take is on that.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, because I think like as our parents and everything, they're from the older generation, right? Where they're like, you need to have like gray hair experience before you can go out on your own type of vibe. And that was always what I had thought too. Like I thought I was going to be like well into my 30s, like kind of like middle aged, if you will, before I could like start my own thing. Cause I was like, oh, I need all this experience to do it. And but I am glad I had that in-house experience because because in school, like even in the marketing world, it's all theoretical. Like you learn about the 4 Ps in marketing, but like you don't actually learn like what kind of jobs and how wide the marketing world is until you actually work for an organization. And so I didn't even know there were like 20 different like marketing functions you could do. And so working in-house really gave me that experience. It really gave me that like, here's how marketing works. Here's how like leads get to the marketing team and here's how they convert and all those kind of like technical know-how things. But the best thing it did was give me relationships. And like a lot of the clients I've had since going freelance have been people I used to work with in-house, like, and who have since gone to different companies. They know what I'm doing. They'll reach out and they'll be like, hey, like, are you looking for work right now? Cause like we're looking for a freelance writer. And so for me, if anything, it's been the best for like relationship building. And I'm very thankful I had that. I don't think I would trade having that in-house experience because I probably always would have wondered like, what if? And so I'm glad I at least had it, got my taste of it, realized it wasn't my vibe, and now I'm better off for it. And I'm very happy I kind of got out when I did because I think COVID really changed like the way corporate America has been. Like I left in like early 2021 and I have friends working corporate right now. And I couldn't imagine being a corporate employee right now in 2024. Like just the way like everything is changing with like return to office, like all of these like other things, the layoffs. So I'm very happy I left when I did.
Yeah, it is definitely not our parents' workforce, is it? Like it's a very different landscape in a lot of ways. And I think also to your point before, marketing itself from the time that we were in school to now, the roles and responsibilities are completely different than they used to be. Like for our clients, when we're doing like Instagram management, for example, you have 6 different people working on that account because it each requires a different skill set that to make it really impactful, like the graphic designer is someone different than the copywriter, is someone different than the strategist, is someone different than the video editor, is someone different than the person doing a community engagement and DMs and everything like that. Like that's so many different roles and responsibilities. Where do you feel like your interest area of all the things you did, both in your corporate experience and then now freelancing? I know you're in this pivot phase, which we'll talk about, but what things get you fired up the most? What's the stuff that's like, man, if I could just do this and nothing else, I would be so happy.
Honestly, and that's and we can get into this more. And for me, it's really the ideas and the strategizing. Like I'm always an ideas person. Like ask my friends, ask my family. I'm always the one to come up with the, hey, what if you did this? Or what if you looked at it from this angle? And I think it was a lot of like the journalism kind of coming through, like looking at all angles and stuff like that. And so that's what I'm trying to capitalize on now for myself is like the ideas, the brainstorming, the strategizing component, and just kind of the big picture, like seeing it, but also getting down into the nitty gritty of like, okay, here's how you can execute it.
Right.
Because I think that's really what I excel at. I've always loved the ideas, like even social media, writing, all that stuff for me. I always get fired up when I come up with a new idea or something new I want to explore and kind of check out. And then just the medium, whether it's writing, creating social media copy, whatever it might be, is just kind of the vehicle to bring that idea to life.
Is there a niche that you gravitate towards? Like, were there certain industries that you felt particularly aligned to, or do you like the challenge of the variety that comes with freelancing?
I like the challenge and the variety. I have my background is in like B2B tech, so I've been writing for a long time about things like AI and ML and all these very heavy concepts. But I don't think creativity operates in silos, and I don't think ideas operate in silos because what you can take from like what an enterprise tech company did really well, you can take to like a consumer brand and like vice versa. Like you can adapt it for different industries and different contexts. next, like using the same idea, which is what I think is really exciting because what works for one might also work for another.
Yeah. And once you kind of understand like the founding principles of stuff, I've noticed that a lot in our work too. Like when we're sending out proposals, okay, take a look at this project. It may not be in your industry, but take a look how we did or accomplished XYZ thing, because I think that could be relevant to what you explained as your goals, right? So there, all of that experience ends up kind of conglomerating into like one big shared knowledge log. I'm at the point now where I've worked on projects that I've completely forgotten about. I don't know if that's happened to you yet, where you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally forgot that we did that. Like that was pretty cool. But talk to us about what your services kind of were as you were getting into freelance, or even as of recent, where you're like, this is kind of what I've been offering to companies. And then tell us where you're headed, because I know you're embarking on like a bit of a switch. But I want to kind of set the stage for what you had going so that we can talk about where you're headed.
Yeah, sure. So, when I started my business, basically up until this year, has really been on pretty much freelance writing, social media consulting, and a little bit of like marketing strategy, but mostly on the freelance writing side because that's what I was doing in house for so long. That's what a lot of people know me for. And for me, when I started my going full time, it was a really low hanging fruit for me because I was like, oh yeah, like freelance writing, there's a ton of opportunities out there to be a freelance writer. And what I kind of realized is I love writing, but like not in the way that companies want writing now. Like there's a lot of guardrails of like what companies put on writing. Like I've seen style guides for companies, like these companies sell software and they have a style guide like they're the New York Times.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is a marketing blog. I'm like, you're using this to sell a product. And so for me, it started to like suck the life out of me for writing. And it made me actually hate what I was doing. And I knew like in my head, I was like, I don't hate writing. I was like, why do I hate the work that I'm doing right now? And I realized that I hated it in the way that, that the companies wanted it. I wanted to just write for me. And that's why I got into writing in the first place, was to express ideas, to express my thoughts. And my writing sounds a lot better when I don't do these weird guardrails. Like, oh, you need to write to an 8th grade reading level, and oh, have like really short sentences and all this stuff. Like that's not who I am.
Like
And
LinkedIn speak, like LinkedIn, where it's like one sentence on its own line for like just forever of a scroll.
Yes, yeah,
and
and
like,
and I understand
why did we decide to do this? This isn't
skimmability, but like,
I guess.
yeah, and just like the way like SEO content is like one of my really hot takes is like I think SEO content, it is just so gamified. Like
Totally.
you only win the SEO game if you know how to play it. Like and it prevents like good ideas and good content from like getting to the forefront because people know what to do to rank on Google. And so I didn't want to. I'm just tired of being a part of that. And so I've been doing a lot of soul searching for the last, I don't know, probably like 6 to 8 months at this point, of like, okay, like what can I pivot to that's one kind of AI like resistant, because writing is like AI is changing writing. AI is not going anywhere. Like what can I do that's gonna be like not gonna, AI is not gonna take over, and really lean into what I'm good at. And so what I realized what that was is really kind of just the ideation, the strategy, the kind of consulting thing for people. And so what I'm trying to do now is kind of help people figure out what ideas they want to capitalize on and like put strategies in place to actually implement them. Because you probably know, running your own business, like we have so many ideas and we start like half of them, we never finish them, and then something else takes our attention. And so I really want to help people get messy and really figure out like, okay, what's the next move based on this big brand vision I have for myself, and what am I going to do to actually like make it a reality, because I can do both like the execution piece and the big picture piece. And I want to bring that to people to kind of help them do that for their own businesses as well.
Very cool. Okay. So we talked about a lot of different ways to do that, right? So you're talking about someone who's like, I've got this vision. I want to sell this product or offer this service, or I want to, like you said before, monetize my social media. I don't know how to get there. So it sounds like they're brain dumping for you and like putting everything out on the table. And then how do you help them make sense of their their own ideas. Obviously, you have experience, so it's a lot easier to see the threads between things. But walk us through that process of someone who signed on with you. It is then now using you to help pull that into some kind of structure.
Yeah. So I have two things I like to start with. One is kind of like going back to the vision. Like what's the thing that you're working towards? One quote that
Mm-hmm.
I love by Stephen Covey, and I can't remember it word for word, but it's basically like you can't climb the ladder if it's propped up against the wrong wall. So it's like really
Mm-hmm.
figuring out like, okay, what's the end goal here? Like what kind of life do I want to live? How do I want my business to fit into my life? Like, and I think so many of us are so caught up into, oh, we want our business to look like this person's business or like this
Mm-hmm.
person's business. But then we get
Mm-hmm.
into it, and I'm totally guilty of this too. And we're like, I don't actually want this. So why am I trying for this? So I
Right.
think it's really looking at like what we want first, and kind of going back to that vision and almost like reverse engineering it. Like how much money do we want to make each month or each year? Like what kind of role do we want to be? Do we want to keep doing like custom DIY stuff for our clients, or do we want to move into something that's more scalable, more passive income? Do we want to be an educator? So it's kind of looking to see like all the different things that we want and reverse
Sure.
engineering it to figure it out. And then the other thing I like to do is what I call kind of like idea viability. So it's like, okay, now we have this idea and you kind of have to put it through a couple different hoops. Like, okay, do I have time to execute on this? How many resources does it take? Does this idea like actually excite me? Is this going to move my business forward? Is
Right.
it so it's just like criteria like that like I have people go through, because it's not worth putting effort towards an idea that like A doesn't light us up and B is not going to actually move our needle forward and have a purpose in our business in the long run. So those are kind of the two things I like to start with before then we get into like the nitty-gritty strategy of like
Sure.
what do you want to do and how can we make it happen?
Sure. I feel like this plagues creatives specifically, right? And I'm one of them where it's like, oh, I have all of these. There was one point where I had so many like digital trainings on my website and I rebranded the website over to another site and I like lost the links to them. And I just decided to like absolutely throw in the towel on the whole thing because I didn't have like the system in place and I didn't have the structure and I didn't have all of the bits and pieces like you're talking about. That's like, okay, no, there could have been a plan for this though. And I think for creatives as well, it's important to vary your income streams, right? So, like being a service based business that also has a consulting offer, that also has some kind of paid resource, that also has paywall content or podcasting or whatever, like the more you can diversify. But I think people get stuck, or a lot of people that I talk to get stuck to know which ones to go for first. And I think you're spot on by saying like you have to follow what you're interested in and what you're passionate about. Because if you don't have that part, it's kind of hard to push through the stuff that's going to get sticky and the stuff that's going to get hard. From your socials, I can tell that you're a big reader like I am, or maybe you're listening audiobook because that's my preferred method. But what kind of texts and things are you listening to, or entrepreneurs are you looking to stay inspired as you're starting to help people in this new kind of branch of your business, this pivot of helping people monetize what they're bringing to the table?
Yeah. So one person who I love, like, and I will never stop talking about her is Kelsey McCormick from Coming Up Roses. She
Okay.
has this like, and she kind of I'm in her program. Today's actually the last day of it. It's called Grow Your Own Brand. And that's kind of
Nice.
like what helped kind of like spark like, okay, like this is like kind of how I want to start like thinking about my business and this mindset shift of like moving from like just this like service provider to actually being like building a brand and doing all this. So I love her content. She talks about being what she calls a squiggly creative. So
Yeah.
somebody who's just like very like all over the place, but like also needs a plan to like get stuff done. So I love her content. There's so many other people too. I'm also in a program from another gal, Gem Creative. Her name's Christina, and it's all a DIY branding program and everything. And
Nice.
those two together have been really great. And for me to kind of realign myself, because I feel like I've been lost for the last couple years of like,
Sure.
what do I want to do with my business? Who am I? Like, all
Yeah.
this stuff. And it's kind of like finding me getting back to like my true roots and like what actually excites me versus and putting my blinders on and being like, no, I don't need all these outside influences. So I feel like it's hard to be authentic because there are so many outside influences like kind of impacting what you think you like versus what you actually like.
And one of the biggest recommendations, and I've said this on the podcast 500 million times, is like stop following the competitors in your industry and start following the people
Yes.
that you can help. Like start getting active in the comment section of the type of person that you want to work with. because I think it's so easy to fall down the trap and be absolutely paralyzed by following people that are in your space and seeing what they're doing. And then inevitably, you're going to be influenced by them creatively. That's just how our brains work. You're not going to remember when you're sitting down to make the reel, that the phrasing came from that one specific creator and then everything starts to look the same. It's so boring. I'm
Yes,
so annoyed.
I completely agree. Like homogeneousness, like right now, is like a hill I will die on. Like from interiors, like everyone liking the color beige, which like if you get the wrong shade of beige, it like doesn't look. It's
Totally.
not cute. It's not cute.
Totally.
But yeah, I just like it's all the same, and like
Mhm.
I don't know why people are so afraid to like show personality and show
Mhm.
color and show all this stuff, because that's what makes like really interesting people. Like I always
Mhm.
gravitate towards people who I consider like a very acquired taste,
Sure, sure, sure.
because like they're cool people, like they're into really cool stuff, and like they kind of almost like do the beat of their own drum. And I love following people like that online too, where it's like I love the hot takes and the spicy opinions. Like I don't want
Right.
another person to say like how important like SEO is for blogging. I want the person to say like, yeah, SEO is trash and this is why we shouldn't use it anymore.
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
so I want more, I want to see more personality, and I want to see more people just being more themselves online versus like this really curated image of what they think they should be.
Right. Do you think that that's a byproduct of people being afraid of getting like internet hate?
I think so. I think it's like internet hate. I think there's like wanting to fit in, and like I think they're afraid of if they go out too much, like people aren't going to want to gravitate towards them and be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well like I'm too different. Like I don't think people are going to like me because I'm like not what like other people are like, or like I don't have the same
Sure.
aesthetic that other people do." So I think there's like that fear. And I think it's just like so much like following of the herd mentality.
Yeah. 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 And I think younger people fall victim to this as well because it's all they've ever known. I mean, I started my Instagram account for my business in 2014, like, and there was not nearly the like amount of people offering doing the same thing. It felt like, right? Because it was still pretty new to, I mean, I had an Instagram account before I even had a website, and I was just selling my services through Instagram. And I think that's pretty typical. But what's crazy is how many different ways you can feel burnout and how many different ways you can feel uninspired by spending too much time online. And my biggest recommendation, because people DM me, it's, oh, where do you find your inspiration? Like, where do you go to feel creative? And I'm like, get off the internet. I was like, I swear to God, please, like, close the screens, turn them off, go listen to some new music, go to a art show, go sit at a park, go to the beach, like, get yourself in a different environment. Because I think, to your point, like, you can so easily fall victim to what everybody else is doing, but also what you feel is the most optimized, right? Like your ChatGPT example. When you were saying that story, I was thinking like it's kind of like as if you had a machine that was feeding you every meal and it was giving you like the most nutritious meal at every meal. And it was like optimized for like your old, like, but if it tasted so bland and terrible, like where's the fun in that? Like you got to get a little bit of spice, like a little bit of variety, a little bit of personality in here, because although the thing that like might be optimized to be the best may not actually be getting you closer to what you need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like, and I think too, like, we want perfectionism. I think we're just like afraid to hold back and like afraid to be honest. And like something I've been really discovering the last couple months about myself is like, I'm a very bold person. I'm very honest. I'm very opinionated. And like, people have like given me a hard time for it in the past. They're like, oh, like, you're too critical, you're too this. And on the flip side, there's people who like, I love your honesty. I love, you know, how bold you are and that you don't hold back. And so I'm just like really leaning into like embracing what makes me me. And I'm no longer afraid of it, because that's where my point of view and like what's going to make me unique really stand out, is really just leaning into that. And I feel more aligned with myself doing all of that, like really leaning into my personality instead of like kind of being like locking it in a box and hiding it and all of this stuff. Cause life is too short to like not be you and not be authentically you. And like, we don't need to put on this mask for people, because most of the people in the world don't matter. Like, it's our like friends and like close loved ones. Like the stranger on the internet, it's like their opinion doesn't matter, you know? And so you shouldn't care what they think, like care what the important people in your life think about you.
And to your point from before, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. It's those relationships that you can, if being bold and being honest is part of your personality, like that's something that you can, that should be authentically happening everywhere. That's not just like the mask or the facade that you put on online, but that's who you are. And so therefore you're going to get people in your real life that are attracted to you for those reasons, and also who are like, yeah, no, maybe I want to work with somebody who's not that, which is fine. But I think it comes from the confidence of knowing that there's no shortage of work for everybody. Like there's plenty of things to go around. It's not feast or famine. But if you go more in the direction towards the projects that make you feel fulfilled and you feel good about, you're going to get more of those types of projects. And every time, I tell this to my team all the time, every time we take a project that we were like, at the beginning, it ends up being one that we didn't like because it just manifests that way, you know?
And honestly, like I've been trying to like trust my gut so much more when it comes to like working with people, taking on projects. Like if my gut is saying like, no, don't do this, like I listen to it now, because there's been so many times where my logic like tries to overrule my gut, and then I end up regretting it. I'm like, why did I take this project on? I hate it. Like, like I wasn't charging enough. I let myself totally get rolled over. Like, so I think really listening to your gut instinct is super important too as an entrepreneur, because your gut instinct is like your guiding light. Like it's going to know more than what you know emotionally and what you know logically. So it's like really important to like listen to it. If something feels off, like it usually is.
Totally. Such good advice. You mentioned that you're in a few different programs. I'm curious how you found out about the programs that you're in, and if you've taken other programs that you had like a so-so feeling about, because I've not invested in any kind of like online education, group mentorship. I have a mentor that I work with, but not in any kind of like group capacity in that way, or online education. So I'm very much a noob to this space. So I'm curious how you found the ones that you're in, and which ones like you really, really felt like made a big, like profound impact on where you're going with the business.
Yeah, this is years actually the first year I invested in anything like that, mostly because like I was just so sick of where my business was. Like I was not getting the growth that I wanted, and I was not like I was hating my business. Like earlier this year, I was filled with dread. I was like, "Oh my god, like I'm not going to like get to where I want to go. I need to make a change." And so part of that was like, okay, well, I need to invest in some outside help, because as entrepreneurs, we know we love to DIY everything because we're like, yeah, we can save a few bucks, and then we end up getting super stressed out and don't have time for anything, and and we don't see the results that we want. So earlier this year, I was watching this. It was a design summit, because for a hot minute I thought I wanted to switch and become a brand designer. That's a story for another time. But I was listening to the summit, and this Kelsey, who I mentioned earlier, she was giving a presentation, and her presentation was called the Golden Seed Offer, and it's one of the things that she teaches on, because her whole theme of her brand is like gardening and roses and all that stuff. And so I like got immediately hooked, and then I started like following her on social and like loved her content, and just started looking into her programs. And I literally bought like 2 of her programs just from like her content, because I was like, yes, this is exactly what I need right now. One, the growing your own brand program. It's like a 12-week program where it kind of it's almost like a brand realignment program, I would say, of like, okay, what do you want to do? Like free up your capacity to work, be more of like a brand leader versus like, I'm going to just be the service provider. So really kind of shifting your mindset around how you look at your brand in your business. So that was the first one I bought from her. I'm already feeling so much better about like my headspace with my business just from being in that program. Like I feel more empowered. I feel more like my business is starting to align with me and my brand. So that's been great. I got another one from her. It's her Launch Your Own Way program, where she basically takes this idea of like launching a product but applying it to your service. So, and she's really big on like productized services and everything. So launching your productized service like a product, instead of like, because I've been in the world of freelance writing where people are like, their idea of marketing is, hey, I have capacity to take on a client this month. That's not marketing.
No.
And now I know that, because I'm like, you're not launching anything. You're not like launching an actual product. So that's changed my way of thinking about marketing. And I'm starting to like doing like a launch for my own product too, with that framework in mind. And it seems so simple, because working in-house, yeah, we had launch campaigns like this all the time for new products. I'm like, duh, So that's been like a really great, like just mindset shift. And then the one I'm in right now is from Christina at Gem Creative. It's called Brand Ed. And it's basically a DIY brand program for for like non-designers. And so she basically takes her big signature service, which has been on my radar to invest in from her. But like, and so when she announced this program, I was like, oh, like I kind of want to like look into this to see if I need like a full-on somebody to like redo my brand, or if I can just kind of get away with this like DIY. And what really sold me on that service from her, I was DMing her back and forth, and she's like, yeah, it's basically my signature service, but DIY. And so I was like, sold, done. And it's been great so far, because between grow your own brand, this brand ed, I'm like, okay, my brand is like coming back into alignment. Like things are like meshing together, which is like the biggest thing I can say this year for me. And I'm feeling like really inspired, really empowered, really like authentic with the direction of my brand. So it couldn't have come at a better time.
Nice. I'll even raise you one better. We've been doing on our side, treating each project launch, like project case study, as its own campaign as well.
Ooh,
so like
I like that.
productizing the offering, of course, but then treating each project as if it's like there's teaser, there's lead up, there's anticipation, there's reveal, and then we talk about the same project for like 2 or 3 weeks. And that's been really helpful for us, because it allows us also to get the maximum amount of traffic over to the client that we're talking about, like sharing the audiences and really doing a deep dive on their stuff, and not just like, oh, here's the results, blah, blah, and like moving on to the next one. Because especially these larger projects that we're taking on now, like they're to the tune of like $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. Like they deserve more than just one post,
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's a lot of work that went into this.
Oh,
So
yeah.
by doing that, it kind of helps eventize the reveal, so that it doesn't feel like it was just a flash in the pan and then it was over.
Yeah. And I think too, like that's like marketing. It's like there's so many opportunities to like market stuff, and you have to market things like more than once. And I think that's like where a lot of like, depending on how your business is structured, I think that's like where a lot of, and I'm learning this the hard way too. It's like that's where a lot of people can like go wrong, where it's like, oh yeah, I marketed, but like you put something out there once and you're like, okay, like that's not really marketing. So that's been a big mindset shift for me this year, is like really think of things like literally just promoting things over and over and over again, to get the message out there, talking about things more than like once, because like with this day and age, we get so many messages every single day. Like we need to talk about things more than just like 3 times to get the message across.
Well, and it's a huge ask, right? Like someone who's cold to your offer, first of all, their chances of, number one, seeing it with the algorithms being what they are slim. Then they have to see it, understand it, number 2. Then they have to see it, understand it, and take action, number 3. Like that's a lot of things that you're expecting from your audience from just one post. That's just not going to cut it. Versus if you can hit that same message, they say like the statistics is like someone has to be exposed to the same message 17 times to actually do something different about it. If they're getting that message served differently, but served 17 different times, the right person is a lot more likely to actually follow through and go from a cold lead to a warm lead to a close than someone who's just like been hit with something once. So that's something to think about too. I have to tell this to our clients all the time, like, real estate, to our merch clients, to other clients that we do social media for. It's like, yep, we're going to keep hitting on this message and we're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to it. And it's not lazy. It's literally strategy. Like it's not that we don't have enough variety for you, but we're considering your audience, because your audience behavior is what should be of paramount importance, because those are the people that you're appealing to in the first place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah. And so it's just been like a different way for me of like marketing like my business and stuff like that than I have been for the last couple of years. Cause I feel like the freelance like gig work world is so different than the online business world, just in terms of like how people create offers and services and how people like market themselves and all of this stuff. It's very fascinating and it's very different. So I have like a foot in like both worlds right now. And it's just so different how people approach business.
Do you see yourself offering more one-on-one work, or are you going to do also some group offerings like incubator, startup-y kind of cohorts, if you like mastermindy stuff?
Yeah. So right now, the offer that I'm launching and as part of this new pivot, it's like it's pretty much a done with you one-on-one offer to start. But I could totally see that depending on demand and stuff. I could totally see that being like a small cohort, like process, like taking, 4 to 6 people through it type of thing. I'd love to do more like bigger, like cohort. I love the idea of incubator. Like I'm a big Silicon Valley Valley fan of the TV show.
For
So
sure.
I love love that language and everything. But yeah, I would love to like take people through stuff like that and just really help people like experiment and like there are no wrong answers type of vibe, like, and be very encouraging, because I think that's what holds a lot of us back from like taking action, is like we're afraid of like messing up, and like we want everything to be perfect, and it's like, yeah, like we're gonna fail, but it's better than just not trying anything at all.
And the accountability of being in a program and having someone to share in your wins is so useful. I really appreciate that about the relationship I have with my mentor is she has to remind me all the time, okay, but Michelle, remember where you were a year ago. Like, look how much progress you've made since 6 months ago. Like, let's not forget about that. Like, yes, these are your day-to-day, your pressing concerns, because I'm always on the phone with her and I'm like, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I'm just like up to here with it. And I just need to like let the valve open, right? And just be able to vent to someone who gets it and who's like been with me on that whole journey. But it's so useful to have someone also help point out like how far you've come from where you started. And I think that that kind of thing, it sounds like a lot of what you might be offering is helping people also appreciate that. It's like, it's not just about the end result. It's about also the transformation that's happened from day one to now.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I've even seen it with my own stuff from like the beginning of this year to where I am now, like, you know, networking wise, like being on podcast interviews, like my social media growth, like just all of these things. Like I look back and I'm like, wow, I feel like a completely different person than I was like 6 months ago. And it's great to like look back and see on that. So I love the process of self-reflection. I love the process of like your wins and everything, because I think that's also really important too, to like see how far you've come, because we often look to like the gap we still have to go versus like how far we've come. So it's just like a big mindset shift of like bringing in gratitude and self-reflection and all of that stuff.
Amazing. Well, where can everyone follow you, maybe work with you for some of your services? Let us know where people can find you online.
All right. Yeah. Lots of places. I'm probably the easiest person to find online. So I'm on LinkedIn, Threads, and Instagram primarily for socials. So that stuff's pretty easy. I'm sure you have all the links in your show notes. I also run a newsletter called Creatives Anonymous, which again, subscribe link will be in the show notes. The newsletter is really kind of my like passion writing project around exploring what it means to be a modern day creative. So I do a lot of essay writing and a lot of things, just really encouraging people to take hold of their own creativity, get back into the swing of things and everything. So that's been a really fun project for me. I also have a new offer coming out. I did kind of like the hard launch today of it on Instagram called Musing to Monetize. So essentially helping burned out service providers really kind of transition their skills and creativity into more of like a scalable offer. So whether it's a productized service, a community, a course, whatever it might be. So I am taking some people through like the beta of that, and the waitlist will also be in the show notes as well. I'm going to be doing a bigger launch this fall. I'm going to Greece like at the end of August.
Ooh,
so
fun.
I'm like, okay, like I'm in this weird awkward gap of time where I'm like, okay, like I can do some stuff, but then I don't want to like do this full on launch before, you know, I go on vacation for a few weeks.
Right.
But yeah, so that's available. And then of course, visiting my website, which has all the other information, but the socials are probably where my most up-to-date information is.
And give us the handle just so people can find it immediately after this episode.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm at Bright Eyes Creative. And then on Threads, I'm at Alexa C. Phillips, because I decided to start my Threads account with my personal Instagram versus my business Instagram. And then, in the show notes. But yeah, Bright Eyes Creative will be probably the main place to find me.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Alexa. We really appreciate it. And guys, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it, tell a friend, tag us on your stories. We'd love to see it. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alexa.
Thank you.
Bye.